Guys, okay, so apparently we're live. Yeah, I know I'm using my little avatar again today, but just not really completely together. My husband's out of town. Had to go to this thing over in, well, whatever. Anyway, so I'm just kind of moving a little bit slow this morning. It always makes me sad when I have to, not have somebody here with me. But luckily, my sister's going to come tomorrow for my birthday, so I'm pretty excited about that. Hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. And yes, my dogs are running crazy over here playing, in front of me, and that's okay too. I don't really mind. They're just baby dogs. They can't help themselves. So come on in. Let's enjoy our book. I'm telling you, this author, she is funny. I mean, she was diagnosed as a sociopath. She always knew she was different, right, from childhood. But it was when she went to UCLA that and she started studying psychology, she really realized, what the problem was. So then she gets basically diagnosed. And we learn a lot about how this is diagnosed and how sad it is that the particular testing that they use is not used until they are a criminal, which does not make sense at all, does it? But anyway, so we're going to go ahead and read chapters 12, 13, and 14 out of the book today and talk about it for a little bit. I hope you enjoy it. I know this channel is a little different for people because, I don't come on here live and discuss all the trending things that are going on. But, what I'm going to do is on my other channel, Little Red Zero, or I'm going to move all of that kind of thing over to there and just keep this channel strictly for speaking, which means reading books. Reading books and discussing books. That is exactly what speaking is. So I thought that's what we would do with this over here today. So anyway, let's get started on this funny little book. We are on chapter 12, and it's called Sociopath. F-A-U-X, Sociopath. Right? We all know some, don't we? It's kind of funny. All right, here we go. So a couple of weeks later, I sat in my bedroom putting in the final touches on my makeup. It was the night of the Midsummer Night's Dream party at the Playboy Mansion, an evening of debauchery I eagerly anticipated every year. But as I stared at myself in the vanity's mirror, I realized I didn't feel very excited. If anything, I felt claustrophobic. I lifted a makeup brush absentmindedly to my cheek, and as my thoughts wandered to the therapy appointment I had earlier that day and what I suspected was the cause of my stress. She does this thing called stuck stress, which is when she starts feeling that very anguish need. She needs to do something to relieve that pressure she calls in her head. Okay. It had felt like a normal session at first. Normal for me anyway. I'd spent the first few minutes recounting Jennifer's dog story and my disgust that she'd used her sociopathic self-diagnosis as an excuse for her actions. Yes, remember the story about her dog? She let a dog attack somebody else's dog and then she lied about it? Okay. It made me sick. I just fumed. Okay, and trigger warning. I'm reading exactly as she writes, and it's some ugly words, all right? She goes, it made me sick. I just fumed. She's no fucking sociopath. She's a dumb fuck road whore who deserves to have her ass kicked. I shot the therapist a defiant glance. I swear to God, if I met her in a dark alley, I'd take her out. Dr. Carlin nodded thoughtfully. It sounds like it was disappointing for you, realizing that she wasn't the person she said she was. I snorted sarcastically. It was disappointing. I didn't get to stab her with my keys in the parking lot. I agreed that what she did was reprehensible, Dr. Carlin acknowledging. But my guess is she knows it too. That's why she wanted to talk to you about it, because she was traumatized. Ha, I replied. That woman wasn't traumatized by shit. She spent the entire weekend hanging out in the flats, cash fucking her sugar daddy. Dr. Carlin raised an eyebrow. Really? How do you know? Because I watched them. Okay, so she talks about all the time that she people watches a lot, that's how she entertains herself a lot with people watching because she does not do very well in these social settings. In fact, how she's managed to mimic her sociopathy is by she just goes and mimics these other people and just mirrors them, and that's how they think that she's normal because she's doing this, really. And she talks about that a lot in this book. A few days after the dog incident, we hosted an album release party at a local bar called Lola's. Watching from a window close to the entrance, I sneered when Jennifer arrived in Joel's Porsche. Asshole, I thought. Jennifer said hi as she walked through the door. Hey there, I replied, giving her an unexpected hug. Were you able to relax? She smiled and just relived my friendly demeanor. Something like that, she said slyly. I giggled with her as if we were old girlfriends. Well, you seem better, I offered. She looked at me confused. Then her face contorted into something resembling sadness. Yeah, but I'm still so sad about that doggy, though. She just wailed a bit too forcefully. For sure. I put my arm around her back as I led her to the bar. So tell me about this guy's house, I said. I'm dying to see it. Oh my God, Patrick, you'd die, she replied. As all traces of sorrow disappeared from her face, she told me the address and explained, it's right off of Beverly. It's got 5 bedrooms plus a studio. And between you and me, she looked around before lowering her voice, I'm going to fuck him in all of them. She laughed and said, like Goldilocks, You are bad. I shook my head playfully, fighting the bile rising up in my throat. So tell me, I said, pulling her close, about Joel's bedroom. Well, it was the room off the pool. I took my time finding it. I left the party early and enjoyed a leisurely dinner at home before taking a long bath. By midnight, I figured the coast was clear, so I got into my car and drove to Beverly Hills. The upscale neighborhood streets were empty, and as I easily found a place to park on the side of the road, creeping along some side low hedges, I made my way to Joel's house and hopped at a small fence. I couldn't believe the lackluster security for such a posh part of LA. I reached to the back of the house and just flattened my body against a wall near the main bedroom. Hidden from view, I inched closer to set the patio doors and peered through a small pane of glass. They hadn't bothered to close the curtains before drifting off to sleep, so I could see the whole room. On the right was a bureau and a television that took up most of the wall. At the far end of the room, a set of double doors opened to a hallway. On the left was the bed, a large 4-poster monstrosity with equally ugly mahogany end table. Something caught my eye, and I saw Jennifer rolling over in her sleep. She was topless, with her wrist bent across her chest. Joel lay next to her with his back to me. Bummer, I thought. I'd wanted to know what he looked like. She is funny, though. She is. I stood on my tiptoes and grabbed a door handle to balance. I hadn't expected it to move, but to my surprise, it did. Seriously, I thought. I pushed the handle again to confirm it. The door was open all right. All I had to do was push. So, without giving it much thought, I did. 3 quick beeps, time for my alarm system, and I froze. My focus darted to the bed, certain the noise would wake up one or both of them. But no, the alarm hadn't been triggered. That's kind of funny. The beeps were simply an open door chime. I paused to gather my senses, and then I stepped inside. Like so many places before, the stillness of Joel's house felt like it was just bursting with frantic energy. I stood there for a few seconds, just basking in it. Then I took a deep breath and relaxed into apathy. After a few seconds, I crept closer toward the bed. I stared down at Jennifer. Well, she's a lot less repulsive when she's asleep, I thought. Still, how nice it would be to be rid of the world of her. Woo, that's just devious, isn't it? It is. I knew this was the extreme, but I allowed myself to think it. I'd never done something so audacious before. Broken into an occupied house to watch its sleeping residents, even if it was only an accident. For a minute, I just stood there, imagining all the things I could do. But then a muscle memory took over, and some part of me just registered the foolishness of my position. I remember my childhood list of rules and the words written in bold print at the top. And this is what she says. No hurting anyone. This is a bad idea, I thought. The moonlight bounced off the pool, causing a ripple of light to move hypnotically across the bedspread. I gazed at it, wishing I could lie down and go to sleep. Instead, I blinked hard and reminded myself I need to leave. Making my way carefully across the bedroom, I slipped silently out the door. Dr. Carlin sat quietly as I prattled on about my excursion. When I was done, she set down her pen and looked at me sadly. Patrick, she said gravely, I'm sure I'm the right therapist for you. Or I'm not sure I'm the right therapist for you. Her words took me by surprise, and I found myself reeling. What? I exclaimed. What are you talking about? Behavior like this, she replied, I'm afraid we're getting into some Tarzoff territory. As a licensed psychologist, Dr. Carlson was bound by the Tarzoff rule. In school, we'd learned about the Supreme Court of California decisions as Tarzoff versus Regents. of the University of California. It requires that all therapists must report to the proper authorities any patient who possesses a serious risk of inflicting bodily injury upon specific victims. Okay, so now she's told this therapist already that she wished she could just rid the world of this girl, Jennifer. And that is why it's very alarming and very sociopathic. I saw a post, this was just was it Saturday? It was Saturday, where people were talking about Gypsy Rose Blanchard. And the question was put, is Gypsy Rose Blanchard a psychopath or a sociopath? Well, when you think about the traits that makes a person a sociopath versus a psychopath, let's discuss her for a moment. I know I don't like usually doing this, but this is part of why I'm reading this here, because we always want to know the psyche of these people and what makes them tick, what makes them do the things they do. So let's look at the traits of a sociopath. And we know that Gypsy Rose Blanchard has already been and is a criminal. So she could take that test, the PCL, I think it's PCLSV or PCL, the test they do for sociopaths. So let me look at something really quick because I don't have the other book in front of me, okay? So let's look at sociopathic traits. Put that toy down. Oh my God, the dogs have their chicken. Hey, put that toy down. Thank you, Bubby. It's the squeaky chicken noise. It's the chicken. Hey, bring me the chicken. Oh my Lord. Okay, so here, let's read it. Sociopath, also known as antisocial personality disorder, or ASPD, is a mental health condition characterized by persistent patterns of disregard for social norms, laws, and the rights of others. Individuals with sociopathy often exhibit the following traits. So let's read them, because I guarantee you, every one of them, Miss Gypsy Rose Blanchard has shown to the world. Okay, so the whole thing was this. It was this post about this, and of course, my answers was she's absolutely a sociopath. Don't you even be fooled. So somebody puts on there, who are you to judge? I thought to myself, well, let's see. I've been reading all about this. I've been studying this because I want to know what makes criminals tick, right? So I think I do know a little bit about it. I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to be, but I do like studying the mind, right? So interpersonal traits of a sociopath are superficial charm and manipulation, lack of empathy and remorse, egocentricity and grandiosity, and callousness and lack of concern for others. Boom, right there. Behavioral traits, impulsivity and risk-taking, aggressive and violent behaviors, deceitfulness and manipulation. Hey there, Ann Reynolds. Good to see you, honey. Good to see you. Cognitive traits. And you tell me if this is not exactly Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Difficulty with emotional regulations, shallow affect and limited insight, lack of remorse and guilt, and justification of their actions. She very much justified why she talked Nick into helping her take her mother's life. So that she is 100% a sociopath. So when next time somebody asks you, is she a psychopath or a sociopath? The answer is, in my opinion, Gypsy Rose Blanchard is an absolute sociopath. So anyway, let's get back to our book here. Oh, Lord. So anyway, she says that she had promised herself a long time ago that, she would not hurt anybody. And then Dr. Carlin told her that she was apparently the wrong doctor for her due to this Tarzoff territory. Anyway, so she goes, behavior like this, she replied, I'm afraid we're getting into Tarzoff territory. As a licensed psychologist, Dr. Carlin was bound by the Tarzoff rule. In school, we'd learned about the Supreme Court of California's decision in Tarzoff versus Regents of University of California. It requires that all therapists must report to the proper authorities any patient who possesses a serious risk of inflicting bodily injury upon a specific victim. And she just named her victim. It was Jennifer, right? I threw up my hands. Tarzoff, are you serious? I didn't go there to hurt anybody. I didn't go there to do anything. The door just practically opened by itself. Now that's her excuse as to why she just went on in. Well, the door opened by itself. I could just go on in, right? Just justifying her action, of course. It's not just Tarzoff, she continued. Her voice was softening. As your therapist, it's my ethical responsibility. Hey, put that toy down. I'm sorry. They love that toy, but not right now, baby. Not right now. Thank you. She looks back at me and smiles. What a funny baby dog. Thank you. She goes, it's my ethical responsibility to help you. But we've been working together for a while now, and your behavior only seems to be getting worse. Great, I said, my voice just dripping with sarcasm. So once again, I tell the truth, and to my own fucking therapist, no less, and I still end up getting punished for it. I'm not punishing you, Patrick, Dr. Colleran insisted, but it's not right for me to continue seeing you if you don't believe I can help you, particularly when you are breaking into people's homes. I'm not breaking into people's homes, I nearly shouted. I went into one home and it was basically an accident. I just snorted. Besides, what do you care? That chick is a dog-killing cockroach. She is a funny writer. You sound angry, Dr. Carlin said. Well, I am angry. Why, she asked. Because she's an liar, liar, I erupted. Jennifer isn't a sociopath. She's a sociopath. She'll tell anyone who will listen how dark she is, but it's only for attention. The truth is, she doesn't know the first thing about darkness. None of them do. Jennifer, Nathan, all of them, they're just sleazebags. All of them I've met lately, bragging about being sociopaths. They're all full of shit. They're cheap fakes using my diagnosis so they can write off their disgusting behavior as some sort of symptom. That is funny. Wait a minute, interjected Dr. Carlin. What do you mean your diagnosis? What are you saying? That you're the only one allowed to be a sociopath? That you're the only one allowed to justify bad behavior? Well, maybe I am, I said, but not because I think I'm the only one. I'm just not the only one that's my whole point. I jabbed a finger in the window. People like Jennifer, those sociopaths, they're making it harder for real sociopaths to get help. Don't you see? She says, I said, that's those copycats, and they don't know a thing about the real sociopathy. They can't imagine the relentless, never ceasing, all-encompassing fucking void of true apathy. All they do is care and wish they didn't. Those people never have to worry they might hurt someone, that they might fucking kill someone, just so they can feel something. That's pretty bad. I stopped and took a deep inhale, forcing my breath to regular. So maybe I'm the sanctimonious one? I just told her, maybe I'm being judgmental, but I don't care. Those people are liars. They're phonies, and I fucking hate them. Well, that's just telling them how it is, isn't it? Oh boy. The therapist shook her head and looked down. This is my concern, she said softly. You are angry and you are struggling. You can argue semantics all you'd like, but what you did, following that woman to her boyfriend's house and going inside, that is not okay. It won't happen again, I said quietly. How am I supposed to trust that, Dr. Carlin asked? Not 5 minutes ago, you were telling me how much you wanted to hurt her. And now I find out you spent the weekend stalking her and breaking into her boyfriend's house. I didn't stalk her. I just argued and then held up my hands as the therapist opened her mouth to protest. Stalking applies to someone who willfully, maliciously, and repeatedly follows or harasses someone else with intent to harm. Dr. Carlin didn't reply, but she shot me an incredulous glare. Okay, my dogs are right behind me. Y'all just, ignore that. They're kind of like, they're cleaning each other, just being dogs. Frenchies are just a mess. They're funny, but they're a mess. I didn't stalk her, I argued. And then she told her what stalking is. Dr. Carlin didn't reply, but she shot me an incredulous glare. I had no malicious intent when I was following her. I just continued. I wasn't even mad when I decided to go. I was just bored. You weren't bored, Dr. Carlin countered. You were looking for a psychological release as a way to stabilize your mental process. You were engaging in a risk-driven act to reduce your apathy. Whatever, I said with a shrug. Same thing. No, she argued. It is not the same thing. People who are bored pick up a book or turn on the television. What you did was very different. You are hunting. You are escalating. It is a problem, Patrick. This is an inadequately motivated antisocial behavior. Number 7 on Cleckley's list. Now, Cleckley's list is a list of all the traits of a sociopath that she had studied when she was in the library at UCLA. Okay? So tell me, she continued, how long are you going to manage your apathy this way? How long until the hunting isn't enough? And then she paused. How long until you hurt someone? How the fuck do I know? I snapped. I sat back and folded my arms. Look, I'm doing the best I can. I continued, just frustrated. You know as well as I do, there's no cure for this. There's no actual treatment plan. So what the fuck am I supposed to do? Again, I'm sorry, trigger warning. I'm just reading exactly as she writes. I'm so sorry she uses some bad language. Dr. Carlin sighed. This is why I feel like I'm not helping you. I didn't respond. The two of us just sat in silence as the sun started to set. You know, I said after a while, there's this researcher, Linda Mealy. She's done some really interesting work on sociopathy. Have you heard of her? Dr. Collins shook her head. I haven't. Well, she wrote a paper on a game theory of sociopaths. She said sociopaths are completely disadvantaged individuals who use cheating strategies as a means of trying to make the best of a bad psychological hand. That's a way to just justify your actions, isn't it? Huh. I memorized it, I said, because she's right. That's what I am. That's what I do. And then I paused. The stealing when I was a kid, my prescriptions in college, my fixation on Jennifer, all of it. Those are my cheating strategies. I'm just trying to make the best of the hand I was dealt. Well, Dr. Carlin pondered this for a moment. But your choice to go into that house after you realized the door was unlocked wasn't part of any strategy. It was an impulsive escalation. So how do I know something like that won't happen again? I shook my head. Because it won't. That's not good enough, she said simply. I think that if you meant what you say about wanting to get better and you want to continue working with me, then we need to have an agreement. Well, what sort of agreement? I asked, just cautiously. Thank you, Anne. I love to read. I know I've talked about this for a little bit before, but I suffer from an eye problem of and anyway, I was about to lose my eyesight before I got into this eye study where they used this medication in this little port that they inserted in my eye for macular degeneration. And it is an inherited thing because both sides of my family, my grandmothers all were blind by the time they died. So when I noticed this happening, I found this study to get into, and it did save my eyesight. And so I would happily read to people every single day if I could, because I feel like I was blessed to get into that study to save my eyesight. Anyway, we'll keep going. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. You know I love you, Ann. You know I do. Hey, you know what I'm going to do? I forgot to. Let me tell you about this. On Wednesday, September the 10th, myself and the Ward's case studies are going to go on my channel, Little Red Zero over there, and we're going to talk about the Eileen Warno's case. One of the things about her is I have her appeals brief and I have her testimony from her trial. And it goes back to, was she a psychopath? Was she a sociopath? What happened to Eileen Warno's that was the trauma response that caused her to become a serial killer? So we're going to talk about that on September the 10th. I hope y'all all come in. I'm going to announce it after I talk to Jen Liu over at the Ward Case Studies as to what time she's going to want to do that. So anyway, look forward to that. Okay, we'll just keep going. I just thought, I get all excited when I start talking about some things and it just comes into my head and I just have to say it. Am I a sociopath? No, I just get excited. Anyway, let's keep going. So she goes, what sort of agreement? I asked cautiously. A contract, she said. In writing, you agree to stop engaging in illegal activity completely, and I will agree to continue to treat you. I raised my eyebrows, dubious. What's to prevent me from agreeing to stop, but then just doing it behind your back? Listen to her, doing it behind her back already. Nothing, said the therapist, but I don't think that would be very helpful to you. So we agreed I would sign an agreement promising Dr. Carlin I would no longer engage in any illegal behavior, including following people without their knowledge. In exchange, she would continue to treat me. I left the office that afternoon feeling okay, but as I sat at my bedroom preparing for the party, it was clear that something had changed. The contract I'd agreed to sign with Dr. Carlin was already making me uneasy. An authentic relationship with my therapist was now contingent upon a promise I just knew I couldn't keep. I was trapped. It was a dynamic that the thought was just unsettling and familiar. Because remember, she would promise her mother too, but she could never keep that promise. So she's going back to her childhood, remembering how that the effects of the promise that she could not keep really affected her relationship with her mother and her sister. So I kept my head down as I walked into the Playboy Mansion, through the foyer to the first bartender, hoping I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. Pushing through the crowd, I crossed the backyard to the pool, where the grotto was it was in full swing, and downed several cocktails on the way. I found an inconspicuous place to sit next to one of the grotto's caves and stared into the water. The lights were beneath the surface, just giving everything a phosphorescent glow. This sucks, I thought. I wanted to be excited. I wanted to be hiding in plain sight, watching people and observing their mannerisms. Under normal circumstances, I would be. But my thoughts just kept returning to my session with Dr. Carlin and the nagging suspicion that I was a lost cause. The party seemed to shrink, and I could just feel myself fading into hopelessness. It reminded me of the night I jumped from my balcony. Okay, so when she was at UCLA, if you missed that part, when she was at UCLA, she got really upset one night. She thought, well, I'm just going to take myself out, because there is no cure and I cannot be fixed. She gets on the balcony of the second floor. She jumps off. But to her surprise, the ground that she landed on was very soft grass that was thick enough to stop her from hurting herself, really. She was able to just get up and walk back into the house. So that was her failed attempt at a suicide attempt. All right. So this sucks, I thought. I wanted to be excited. I wanted to be hiding. Okay, let me go back. Under normal circumstances, I would be. But my thoughts kept returning to my session with Dr. Carlin and the nagging suspicion that I was a lost cause. The party seemed to shrink, and I feel myself fading into hopelessness. It reminded me of that night I jumped from my balcony. A splash from the pool startled me, and I took a sharp inhale. I felt my forehead. The world was spinning. The alcohol had kicked in, and I knew I needed to leave. But I wasn't sure I could make it across the yard, much less back to my car. I swallowed hard and took another deep breath, steadying myself against the grotto's rock walls. I'm just buzzed, I thought. It's no big deal. I just need a quiet place to ride it out in. I looked across the yard again, scanning the property for an escape. I fixed my sights on the back patio and slowly took my hand off the wall. I took a careful step forward as I regained my balance, then another and another. The walk wasn't far, but seemed to take forever. What, I'd fucking drank so much? I muttered. I'd always had a delicate relationship with alcohol. I liked being relaxed, but certainly didn't like the idea of losing control. My destructive behavior was hard enough to keep in check under normal circumstances. I slipped off my shoes. The cool grass under my feet improved my mood. I looked up at the bright lights of the mansion. Getting there, I thought. There were people everywhere. I took my phone out of my purse and acted as if I was talking to someone. My steps were quicker as I approached the building and climbed the marble stairs. Finally reaching the patio, I grasped the door's handle as if it was the edge of the swimming pool. A wave of air conditioning hit my face, and I was happy for relief. I walked slowly toward a giant split staircase and leaned against one of the immense wooden sculptures just formed as a banister. It was a statue of a man wearing a wide-brimmed hat. He was holding an orb in one hand and something like a spear in the other. It looked like Don Quixote. This massive room that separated the front and the back entrance was awash in light. I shielded my eyes from the glare of the Titanic chandelier that hung from the vaulted ceiling. I just need quiet, I thought. I need darkness. I glanced at the front door. Maybe I should just start walking into my car. As I parked considerable distance away, and with that state I was in, I knew the idea was foolish, but I was running out of options. There was an archway directly across from me that draped with its black curtain. It framed a corridor. I knew that led to Hugh Hefner's private office. Hef's office would be dark and quiet and empty. It was the perfect place for me to recalibrate and get myself together. I cut across the marble floor to the archway. There were a dozen people still congregating on the foyer, far too many for me to sneak into the office just unnoticed. I turned my back to the room and decided to wait them out, watching their reflections in a window. After a few minutes, the crowd receded like a tide. I figured it wouldn't be long before the next swell, so I quickly pushed through the velvet curtains and slipped into the archway. The corridor was nearly pitch black, and my discomfort was swiftly eliminated by the sensation of the obscurity. Invisibility, once again, provided immediate solutions to my stuck stress. She talks about stuck stress a lot. Now, stuck stress is that overwhelming feeling she's getting as she's getting that urge to, the pressure builds up. She calls it stuck stress. The rising pressure, exasperated by my anxious and claustrophobic reaction, had been neutralized. Now the apathy was a welcome repose. Disappearing into Hef's office, I closed my eyes and leaned back against the door. I took a moment to embrace the stillness, and then wandered around the cavernous room as my vision slowly adjusted to the darkness. A life-size ceramic tiger sat next to a chase lounge. Its eyes were sparkling as if every bit of the limited light inside the room had decided to congregate in their tiny apertures. I sat on the chase and rested my hand on the tiger's head. I wonder why or what would happen if we tried to leave together. I asked the tiger. You, me, and Don Quixote, I smiled. That would be fantastic. Fantastic and uninviting behavior, with drink and sometimes without. I said reciting number 13 on Clefley's list, and then I rested my head against the plush fabric. This would definitely fall under the former. I just confirmed that drowsily. Okay, so she's talking about this list, this Clefley's list. It's one of the, she's talking about the number, did she say 13? Which one did she say? Yes, number 13 from that list. With the noise from the party floating through the drapes in velvety muffled tones, I was so relaxed that I almost fell asleep. But my groggy spell was broken by the crash of glass exploding onto the marble floor. It was somewhere, and at once I was wide awake. I listened for a few seconds and then pushed myself off the recliner. I crossed the room and took a seat at Hef's desk. A notepad sat next to the telephone. Each page had the Playboy bunny embossed on the top, and below, from Hugh M. Hefner. I liked Mr. Hefner. I wasn't sure how he would feel about me sitting alone at his desk instead of socializing. But I imagined he wouldn't be terribly upset. Just to be sure, though, I scribbled him a quick note. She actually used his paper. She's funny. Hi, Hef. In case you were wondering who was hanging out in your office tonight, it was Patrick. I promise I didn't disturb anything, even though I really wanted to. And then she signs XXP. I slipped the note under the corner of the telephone, which triggered a thought. She is doing something bad. She's already broken the rule that she made, or her agreement she made with her doctor. So she slipped the note under the corner of the telephone, which triggered a thought that had been gnawing at me for quite some time. In recent weeks, there had been at least a dozen different times I'd wanted to make a call. What do you think? I asked the tiger. Should we see if he's home? I lifted the sleek black candle and dialed the number I knew by heart. David answering on the second ring. Now, David is her boyfriend that she had from high school. The only person that she was ever really open to, other than the doctor, about how she is. Okay. What do you think? I asked the tiger. Okay, so she calls. Guess where I'm at? I said. Hey, he said. I was hoping it was you. Caller ID just at LA. Homely Hills, actually. I told him I'm at the Playboy Mansion. Get out, David laughed. I gotta visit you someday. Your life is so crazy. I thought of David visiting me made me so happy. Of course, I knew better than to put my faith in simple solutions, but still, it was lovely to imagine. Hearing his voice, thinking about being together again, it just felt good. It felt honest. I felt real, even though I knew it was just a fantasy. Well, how long has it been? He asked. 2 years now. Closer to 3. I said it was the longest we'd gone without seeing each other since we'd met. But who's counting? Neither of us said anything for a bit, and David broke the silence. It's weird, he said. We haven't seen each other in years. We live on different sides of the country. And then he paused. But I still think about you every day, like you live next door. Well, I smiled. Glad I wasn't the only one. Me too. What do you think that means? He asked. Well, I don't know, I replied absentmindedly, rifling through one of Hef's desk drawers. So she's digging in Hef's desk drawers. She is bad. Well, for what it's worth, he said softly, you're still the coolest girl I've ever known. I stopped fidgeting and smiled. Yeah, well, I think you're pretty cool too. After another pause, I decided to lighten the mood. So I'm going to send you a little present from Hugh Hefner's office. Think of it as a reward for being such a loyal subscriber. Please don't steal anything. Christ, will you relax? I told him. I swear to God, you're such a square. As in, not a thief. Ask forgiveness, not permission, I replied. Now, that's a famous saying. People always say, well, it's better to ask forgiveness than it is for permission, right? Because people will forgive you before they tell you it's okay. That's so funny. Well, that's terrifying. Well, it's my motto. I'd say it's worked out pretty well so far. I could hear David laughing. Address, please. He gave me his mailing address and we said our goodbyes. Then he added, I really love you, you know. And I didn't know it. Even after all these years, I love you too, I said. And then I hung up. There in the dark, my ears still warm from the phone, I felt unbearably at peace. But unlike when I'd first entered Hefner's sanctum, my tranquility was not the result of invisibility or apathy. It was because I felt seen. I felt acceptance. I felt honest, and yet I still felt safe. I slipped the notepad into my pocket and turned to leave. Halfway to the door, I stopped myself. I returned to the desk and grabbed a pen and added to my note. Now she's stolen the notepad and the pen. P.S. Not true. I actually took one of your notepads so I could send it to an official friend. I hope you don't mind. XX. David would be proud of me, I thought, as I walked away. Then I thought of my mother. The unexpected memory washed over me like a tidal wave. I recalled the way I used to feel when I would confess my crimes and she would call me her honest girl. For a second, I was transported to San Francisco and the smell of chocolate cake, to a time before I had to hide, to a time before I knew words like sociopath or sociopath. So I took to a time when my feelings for someone else were so powerful, they were all I needed to try harder, to be better. Before I understood that I was different, before I felt like I was all alone, it wasn't always bad stuff, I thought. Once upon a time, there was another way to make my apathy disappear. A flicker of light distracted me, and I saw the tiger's eye glimmering into the darkened room. I winked at him, turned and walked away. A few seconds later, I felt the mansion. A few minutes later, I left the mansion and started down the long and winding road back to my car, wondering if I was feeling now was lingering inebriation or something else. I no longer felt drunk, though. This was something different. This was something normal. Okay, chapter 11 is the title is called Home. Now look what she's done. She signs this agreement with her doctor that afternoon, and then she breaks the agreement already. She's went into places she didn't belong. She's stealing things from Hugh Hefner of all places. She's making a long distance phone call on Hugh Hefner's phone. That is a type of theft. Gosh, it makes me laugh. I was at home late one evening a few weeks later when I was startled by a knock at the door. I got up from the couch and just peered through the peephole. My jaw dropped and I threw the door open. David smiled nervously. I wasn't sure if you were serious, he said, but I figured I'd just roll the dice. I leapt on his arms, nearly knocking him over. How'd you get here? I just asked finally. My voice just muffled against his neck. He laughed. I drove, silly, packed up everything I owned and just headed west. I pulled back and stared at him, still in shock. For me? For you, he said, and then he kissed me. It was exactly the way I'd always dreamt it would be, on the rare occasions I'd allowed myself to dream. In an instant, all my old feelings returned, just splintering my apathy as they rose. David's strong arms and steady continuance just felt like what I'd always considered home to me. There was no awkward adjustment period. It was like we'd never been apart. Overnight, I went from being an independent single woman to being half of a couple. I'll admit the change was quite abrupt. I'd never been in a conventional relationship as an adult, and I'd never been the type of person who rushed into things. I liked privacy and secrecy and discipline. I preferred to keep people at arm's length and to keep my house immaculate as an immaculate sanctuary. So I surprised myself. I'm glad he made that trip. I'm glad he did. When from the moment David showed up unannounced on my doorstep, I traded it all in to be with him. You're like a magician, he said. We were relaxing in the Los Angeles sunshine the following weekend, sipping wine at Moraga Vineyards. The private winery was tucked away behind a thick gate in the canyons on the Santa Monica Mountains, and it was one of my favorite places in the city. I'd been invited to a tasting a few months before and was thrilled that I could now take David as my plus one. This place, he continued, looking around, it's like a mirage. How did you even find it? He was right. Moraga was like a mirage, a stunning vineyard hidden in the heart of Bel Air. I'd never known it was there until I stumbled upon it during a walk one afternoon. Astonished by the seemingly endless rows of pristine grapevines, I made my way to the street and looked around until I found the entrance. Then I knocked on the door and introduced myself to the owners. So you just knocked on the door, David asked? What did you say? Well, the truth. I replied that this place is the mecca of secret gardens, and they deserve a medal for turning the land into a working vineyard. Wait, David interjected. Who is they? Well, the owners, Tom and Ruth Jones. Hold up, he said, his eyes widened. This is Tom Jones's house? The Tom Jones? No, I said, laughing. I mean, yes, this is Tom Jones's house, but not the singer. Trust me, though. This Tom Jones is the best Tom Jones. So you just walked up to the door and said hi. David shook his head Did they freak out? No, I said. They were very sweet and told me all about the property and the history. Then they asked me for my address to put me on the list for the tastings and stuff. I waved my hand around at the surroundings and voila. Like I said, he replied, his eyes just twinkling, you're a magician. I felt the same way about him. Suddenly, I was no longer tormented with the task of managing my apathy. The second David arrived, it disappeared, eradicated by overwhelming feelings of love. And what's strange about this is, they always say, well, sociopathic people do not have the ability to feel love, sorrow, remorse, all of these different things. But she's explaining to us that she actually does feel like what she's feeling is love. Okay. Mad, crazy, all-encompassing love that never seemed to diminish. I no longer had to worry about prescriptions or cheating strategies or pressure or sociopathic anxiety. I could just be, with nothing to hold me back. I set about exploring life as a normal, quotation, normal person. It reminded me of a show I used to watch on Nickelodeon called Super Toy Run. I don't know if anybody else remembers that show, Super Toy Run. Anyway, that's so funny. In the show, kids were given 5 minutes to race through a Toys R Us and grab everything they could. As a child, I spent hours recreating the circumstances in my mind, categorizing the aisles and perfecting my own strategy for how to achieve the best outcome in the shortest time. And now, I was doing something similar. My plan was simply to run around life and grab as many... Hang on, I lost my place. My computer started to blink off. Ugh. This crazy thing. I think I'm going to get a camera. I think I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to get the camera that is filming you live, and so it doesn't ever just flicker off like your laptop does. So anyway, here we go. Let's get back on this. I looked at that this morning. I just need to save up a little bit of money. So she goes, she spent hours just recreating the circumstance in her mind, just categorizing the best outcome in the shortest time. And now I was doing something similar. My plan was simply to run around life and grab as many normal experiences as I could. Going to dinner and a movie after work was a joy. And Sunday morning walk around the neighborhood. Sipping coffee and holding hands. It was just an adventure. The more mundane, the better. I embraced all opportunities to be conventional. Ordinary things, like buying groceries or crawling into bed with him at the end of the day. It just made me feel effervescent with contentment. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just imagining a life free from emotional detachment and shadow self-temptations. I was experiencing it. I was free, and I wanted to shout my excitement from the rooftops. And I wasn't the only person grateful for David's influence. My father, although surprised by the velocity of our relationship, just welcomed the change in his daughter's lifestyle. Our parents always liked David, even when they were children. You really seem to like this guy, he said. Dad and I were having our weekly Sunday dinner at the Palm. As usual, we'd met at the bar while waiting for our table. David had quickly become a fixture at in our family's dinners, but he was running a bit late. I was happy for the opportunity to gush behind his back. Dad, I said, I don't just like him. I'm like a crazy person. I'm crazy, insane, madly in love with him. The waiter set a freezing martini in front of me, and I took a deep gulp, slurping up the thin chips of ice floating on the top. He makes me feel like all the bad parts of myself aren't bad at all. They're just misunderstood. I feel like the best version of myself when I'm around him. I'm serious. If he asked me to marry him tomorrow, I would. Whoa, Dad replied. Maybe pump the brakes a bit. Why, I asked. David's the guy I know in my soul. And then I paused and lowered my voice. It might sound nuts, I said, but it's like I found my missing half, my good half. I shook my head in disbelief as I considered it. All the things I've always struggled with, empathy, emotions, I paused again. It's like David has filled that space in my heart where those things are supposed to be. And he's such a good person, Dad. I just sighed. He gives me a reason to be better. He makes me feel like I can be a good person too. It was true. David was patient, thoughtful, calm, but unlike my sense of calm, which was often simply indifference, David radiated a sense of stillness. This wasn't just evident in his demeanor, but also in his marvelous ability to recognize the sublime. Let me reread this sentence, okay? David radiated the serene stillness. This wasn't just evident in his demeanor, but also in his marvelous ability to recognize the sublime in the simple. Whether it was taking time to consciously devour the perfect sandwich from Bay City's deli or stopping to point out the constellation in the night sky, David was masterful at savoring the simplicity. Surprisingly, for the first time in my life, I was able to follow suit. Even household tasks like cooking now brought me immeasurable joy. Though I'd always loved food, I'd never taken much interest in learning how to make it myself. But when David arrived, cooking became my passion. I embraced the role of happy homemaker and began making our dinners nearly every night. I started with basic stuff, but eventually became a more adventurous, just spending hours mapping out our menus and experimenting with different flavor profiles. After work, I'd head straight to the kitchen to chop up the ingredients and select the wine. Once the meal was planned, I'd remove layers of cakes from the refrigerator where I'd left them to cool after baking, and in the morning, and then take my seat to the dining room table. There I'd slice each layer in half using her mother used a string and two little pieces of stick to cut cakes with, because if she tried to use a knife, it would just tear the cake up, all right? Okay. Then I'd slice each layer in half using pieces of thread, just the way my mother had once done. And I would slather the homemade icing between them, stacking the pieces into towers of decadence. Sitting there, licking chocolate off my fingertips, I often thought of the man with the German shepherd I'd followed home to his perfect little family. The slice of life I'd captured, The slice of life I'd captured, though, through their living room window remained crystal clear, like a vintage Polaroid pinned for years into the dusty corner of a vision board. One day, I'm going to be just like them, I'd imagined, and now I was. Leaning hard into my vision of domestic utopia, I always made sure the house was perfect before David got home. Once dinner was prepped, I would carefully set the table, light the candles, and walk around the house, double-checking that everything was neat and tidy. But all of these tasks were pleasure-delaying tactics that set stage for my most cherished ritual, selecting the evening soundtrack. I kept the records in the living room on a bookcase near the fireplace. There were hundreds of LPs, most of which had belonged to my father, vestiges of his lifetime spent in radio. But lately I'd begun making contributions of my own. Jackie McLean, John Coltrane, Hank Mobley, Thelonious Monk, B.B. King, McCoy Tyner, Bill Evans, Duke Ellington, and Nina Simone were just some of the recent additions I'd put on the shelves. I had the albums for years, but I never put them on display. I've kept them hidden, and for a specific reason. Jazz music had always had a profound, almost paranormal effect on me. The rapinistic notes never eased my apathy, but they did sit alongside it, like a silent companion or a perfectly paired glass of wine. I was always careful with dosing. I think I was worried the music might lose its power if I listened too much, or perhaps I would start to associate it with particular memories or periods. I wanted to keep it clean, potent, so I refused any risk of overindulgence. Instead, I would just wait until the pressure was nearing the unbearable peak, and only then would I reach for my albums. With jazz blaring through my headphones, I felt less alone and more accepting of the nothingness inside. I never had to alter the lyrics to suit my vacancy. I never had to do anything but listen. In this way, the music was its own reward, and I relished any opportunity to disappear inside it. So she learned years ago, when she was a child, that if she listened to jazz, it was very comforting to her, and the pressure in her head seemed to dissipate, which I thought was kind of interesting because, I've talked to a lot of people who talk about music as being their therapy. Like they talk about, when they're listening to music on their earbuds or headphones, whatever it is, they're able to get more done in the house, or they feel better while they're driving, these kind of things. So I thought that was it was interesting that she talked about that. Living with David, however, I had no use for such rationing. Whether it was jazz or food or wine or sex, I could indulge in everything I wanted, whenever I wanted. I didn't have to always be in control. I didn't have to be measured. I knew I was safe with him, and that meant I was free. I was free to be normal. I was free to make any dinners and drink my wine and seduce my boyfriend. And I was free to listen to my music every night. To be fair, I always made it a point to do so before David got home. Even though our musical tastes were nearly perfectly aligned, in every other respect, David hated jazz, and he made no secret of his disdain. "This music sounds insane," he said one night, laughing. "It makes no sense." I laughed along with him. David worked in technology and he preferred things that were linear, so his devotion to logic was uncompromising. For him, there was only one way to do things, the right way. It's one of the reasons he's become such a good computer programmer. He never made mistakes, ever. He was methodical and patient, and he didn't cut corners. Hey, Kelly, how you doing? Good to see you. You're listening while you work? I'm so glad. See, that's what I like. I mean, when I first started doing this channel, I knew I was going to read books like this because I really do enjoy it. But I thought about just doing podcast type thing. But then I realized, well, no, I want to talk to people. I mean, I'm not going to stop and take breaks and we discuss the books or whatever. I like to talk to people. So thank you for listening. I really do appreciate that. So just to let you know, if you weren't here in the beginning, from now on, all of my readings are going to be done on Little Red O Speaks. It's Little Red Zero Speaks because it is speaking. My other channel is going to be for discussions on topics. So just to let you know. And I was telling Ann Reynolds that on Wednesday with Jen Liu from the Word Case Studies, we're going to do the Ann Warnos case. I have her brief from her appeal, and we're going to discuss her testimony from her trial. Because the question is, and the reason why I'm talking about it is, the question is she a sociopath? Was she a psychopath? Or was she something else that caused her to be a serial killer? Because she was a serial killer. So anyway, I'm going to continue, but thank you. We're going to read chapters 12, 13, and 14. We are in the middle of chapter 13. So, okay. She's a funny writer, and trigger warning, she cusses. Just to let you know, I just read it exactly as she writes it. So anyway, she goes, he was methodical and patient. He didn't cut corners. That's why it was no surprise when soon after moving to LA, he was hired by an internet marketing startup to spearhead the creation of all of their digital initiatives. He got the job with little effort, and we settled even deeper into our life of blessed domesticity. Why do you have to lock? She goes, why do you have a lock picking? Oh, wait a minute. He goes, why do you have a lock picking kit? David asked. It was several months after he'd arrived, and he was rearranging my closet to make room for some of his things. After a few half-earned attempts to finding him his own place, we decided to acknowledge that's obvious. You just move in with me, I said. And so he had just moved in with her. Do you actually know how to use this stuff? He asked. He was holding up a clear plastic padlock, a teaching tool that allows you to see inside it while you're practicing. Yes, I said proudly. Why? I stepped inside the closet and cocked my eyebrows as I leaned against the frame. You know why, I answered. David did know, of course. He knew all there was to know about me, yet he often acted surprised by my revelations and a reaction that confused me. What am I going to do with you? He asked, just wrapping in a sexy embrace. You're such a bad girl. I smiled and kissed him. Yep, but you're my bad girl, he said, breaking away to the lock. Wait a minute. He goes, breaking away to lock eyes with me, right? Well, we're in this together now. So let's 86 the breaking and entering. He tossed my lock-picking kit into a nearby wastebasket. The tools made a clong when they landed in the metal trash can. And I winced. Now, you know she's going to grab that out of the trash can. Hey there. What? Wait a minute. You love that? Oh, I'm so glad you're looking forward to that because I am too. Okay, Streamlabs, it says, I need to get, I don't know why the Streamlabs thing is popping up, y'all. I'm just going to ignore it. So if something comes and it says your name from Streamlabs, just ignore it. I don't know why it pops up here. I use StreamYard. At one time I tried Streamlabs, but I didn't like it. So anyway, from now I'm just kind of stuck with this little bot thing that pops up. Just ignore it. I'm sorry, guys. Let's get back. All right. She goes, you know, she's not going to leave that in the trash can. She can't do it. Geez, honey, do you have to throw it away? His dark brown eyes were just imploring and tender. I'm just trying to keep you safe, he said, so you can quit it, please, for me. I sighed, shook my head, and planted a kiss on his cheek. Sure, I heard myself saying, I can do that for you. Now, I guarantee you she went and grabbed it out of the trash. I have not read ahead. I do not know, but I'm going to guess that. A few hours later, I was back in the closet, my eyes full of dry cleaning. As I hung the clothes on the racks and stripped the plastic bags from the hangers, my eyes fell once again to the trash can and my kit still sitting inside it. I glanced at the bags in my hand and then again the garbage can, where I intended to toss them. The thought of burying my tools beneath a fistful of plastic seemed strangely horrifying. Fuck that, I thought. I bent down and retrieved them. I knew it. I knew she was going to pick it up. The soft clinking sounds they made inside their leather case was comforting. I shoved the plastic tiny, it was a tiny, she goes, I shoved the, oh, I turn the page, guys, hang on. She goes, I shoved the plastic into the bin and turned to the drawer where I kept my favorite t-shirts. You can stay there, I said to the kid, as I slid it beneath a stack of concert tees. Satisfied with the hiding spot, I closed the drawer and left the closet, snapping the light off as I went. The tool silently rested out of sight beneath a mountain of soft cotton, waiting patiently for that next adventure. Oh my God, she's bad. Chapter 14. All right, this is called Liberty. You know, this isn't going to last, right? Dr. Carmen says. It had been 6 months since David moved in, and I was in her office for our usual session. The park across the street was empty, and it occurred to me that the soft grass would be an excellent place for a picnic. It was similar to the park at the Rockefeller estate where we'd first met. Instead of answering Dr. Carlin, I started making a mental list of what I needed to create the perfect basket. But Trick, she interrupted. What do you think? Oops, she goes, what do you think about what I just said? I think, I replied dramatically. The Bergamaner Station is the best kept secret in all of Los Angeles. The Bergamaner Station is a huge cultural complex. It's home to several art galleries located in the heart of Santa Monica. David and I had recently stumbled upon it, and I was still somewhat surprised. I'd never known it was there. Can you believe that place? I continue. It's like an art wonderland. Have you ever been? Yes, she said dryly, along with everyone else on the west side. I playfully threw my hands in the air. See, I shook my head in astonishment. This is my point. Just look at all the new things I'm discovering. I just leaned back triumphantly into the couch. The therapist was exasperated. This is my point, she said, softening her tone. Don't misunderstand. I'm thrilled about all these new experiences you're having, but the root of it, the excitement, the exploration, the obsession with domesticity, the fantasy of homemaking, they sound like limerence, the first phrase of love. She shook her head sympathetically and added, which, as you know, doesn't last. I looked down my nose at her. Wow, I said with a sneer. Well, do you want me to be honest or not? Well, Dr. Carlin asked. I rolled my eyes to signal reluctant compliance. Because I've been trying to talk to you about this for a while, you had only just agreed to stop using your behavioral prescriptions when David arrived. She explained, so we weren't ever able to process your experience with apathy and pressure without them. We weren't able to help you find healthier ways of coping. And, to be quite honest, I'm concerned about it. Why? I exclaimed happily. This is what I've been trying to get you to understand. The apathy is gone, so the pressure's gone too. It's like I found a permanent prescription. I'm cured, I announced semi-sarcastically. Cured by love. You mean by proxy, Dr. Carlin said. What does that mean? That's not permanent, Dr. Carlin insisted. None of this is permanent. Where apathy may be temporarily displaced, but it will come back along with the pressure and most likely the anxiety. And when it does, I want you to have a healthier way to deal with it. And she sighed, her face full of concern. Sociopathy doesn't just disappear. You know that. I'm only saying this because I want you to be prepared. I understand, I told her earnestly, and I am prepared. I'm trying to be anyway. Well, that surprised her. What do you mean? It occurred to me a few weeks earlier. I'd been sitting next to the picture of the window in the living room, just listening to music, waiting for David to come home. It was the same window, though, which I'd often watched the neighbors from Tarzana, making sure they'd both left for work before I ventured into their home for my weekly prescription. I looked at the dark, empty house across the street. The couple had moved, and it was for sale. Would it still feel the same, I wondered? I didn't bother to close the door behind me when I left from my living room. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me slow down for a second. Now, this is kind of funny. Okay, so she had a habit when she would feel this pressure when she was younger. I believe this was discussed in chapter 6 or 7. Don't remember exactly. Where she would go to these empty houses to sit in the still quietness. She was breaking into people's homes to sit in their home. She would wash their dishes. She would move. She would do things, just little things that they would hardly notice that somebody had been in their house. But this was the one of the things that she would do as a child. It's crazy, you know? She's so, well, she was even, well, this was even after college. I mean, she would just go find, she's got some criminal behaviors, right? Anyway, I looked at the dark, empty house across the street. The couple had moved and it was for sale. Would it still feel the same, I wondered? I didn't bother to close that door behind me when I left. From my living room, Miles Davis, Volume 2, played, his trumpet wafting its way to my ears as I walked. I tapped my lock-picking kit against my thigh. The metal tools made satisfying clinks in my pocket. I'd never visited the house after dark, and the yard seemed oddly unfamiliar as I approached the back door. I twisted the knob and discovered it was unlocked. So technically, breaking and entering, I whispered. Well, when I stepped into the kitchen, my muscle memory triggered, and I braced myself to meet my canine accomplice. But Samson was long gone. Moonlight poured through the windows and provided just enough illumination for me to navigate the vacant house. I walked into the living room and climbed the staircase to the second level, just running my hand along the blank walls as I went. Then I followed the short hallway into what had been the main bedroom. From its window, I could see my own house across the street. If anyone saw me up here, I thought, they'd think I was a ghost. Seen yet unseen. The best of both worlds. I stepped my hands on the window frame and pushed my thumbs against the locks, gently lifting the pane. Canyon breezes filled the room along with the notes of woodwind still blaring from my living room speakers. I felt everything and nothing at the same time. The effect was narcotic, and I slid down the wall, just coming to rest beneath the open window. I leaned my head out on the ledge. If this isn't heaven, I said aloud, I don't know what is. I gazed at the shadows on the opposite wall and smiled. Being inside this house seemed different somehow, and it wasn't just the lack of furniture. It felt different. Something had changed, and I liked it, though I couldn't put my finger exactly on what it was. I recalled my favorite Radiohead song. For a moment there, I sang softly. I found myself. It was a verse from Karma Police, slightly altered to suit my circumstances. As I sang, my thoughts drifted to my dad's comment about being a sociopathic Buddhist. Oh, that's funny. I looked around this bare room amused. How much karma would a visit like this cost? It was a rhetorical question, but it got me thinking. Being in this house isn't having anyone. And she goes, being in this house isn't hurting anyone, and it doesn't feel bad. I thought, so who's to say that it is? It was the same question I'd first asked myself in middle school. All these years later, I still didn't have an answer. Only now I don't care, I whispered. I tilted my head lazily to the side, and from the corner of the room, a glimmer of metal caught my eye. I crawled across the floor to investigate it. It was a Statue of Liberty keychain, or at least it had been. The chain was broken and the key ring was missing. I picked up the statue and ran my thumb along the smooth base. You're coming with me. So she would always take little trinkets from wherever she went into somebody's house when they were home. I mean, she would always take a little something. She has a little box that she keeps in a closet. When she was a child, her mother and her would take and return the items that she had taken from other people's homes, and she would apologize. And then her mother would always call her good girl, right? It's just this, it's sad, but it is a little bit funny. I picked up the statue and ran my thumb across the smooth face and says, you're coming with me. Then I sat for a while and continued silence. A flash of headlights from the street below snapped me out of my reverie. I stood up and took a long and satisfying inhale. Then I closed the bedroom window and trotted down the stairs and left the house. Only this time I didn't bother with the back entrance. I exited through the front door. The provocative music from my living room was still soft and distant, but growing louder as it welcomed me home. In bed that night, I told David about my visit to the house across the street and showed him the trinket I found inside. I think it should be our signal, I said. What do you mean, he asked. Whenever I'm doing something, unorthodox, I told him, choosing my words carefully. I'll leave this on the table next to the front door. That way you'll know. David pulled me close and said, unorthodox. Is that what you're calling it? I giggled. Yeah, I said. So this is our unorthodox statue. It's just like the bat signal. He shook his head. It's nothing like the bat signal. I think David's getting a little bit annoyed here, but I'm not sure. Again, I'm never going to read ahead on these books because I just want to read it and have the same reactions you're having. Because I think it's great. I mean, it's just so natural, and that's how it should be, I make a show of rolling my eyes. Whatever the point is, when you see it, you can ask me what I've done, and you have my word. I'll be honest. Or if you don't want to know, I won't tell you. Whatever you want. What I want, David replied, is to understand why you went over there. He sounded disappointed. You said you hadn't felt like doing anything bad lately. You said you hadn't been feeling the apathy since I got here. I was getting to that, I said, excited to explain, because you're right. Tonight, I was apathetic at all. I went because I wanted to. I told him it isn't wild. Wild? How? Well, he turned and pushed an elbow into the pillow, resting his head on his palm. That's the part I don't get. You said you don't like feeling like you have to do stuff like that you were happy to finally just be normal. You've been telling me that your wish was you've been telling me that was your wish practically since the day we met. Yes, and that's true. I squeezed his arm affectionately. That's what's so crazy about it. I gestured around the house. Our whole life, everything we do together, it's been incredible. She goes, living like this with you, feeling like, I started laughing. That's the thing, I just feeling, consistent feeling. God, David, I said, you can't imagine what it's like. Then why, he asked gently. I promise I'm not judging you, I'm just curious. If the only time you feel like you have to break the rules is when you don't feel, then why? If you've been having so much feeling with me, did you break into that house tonight? Because I didn't feel I had to, I explained. I felt like I wanted to. I wasn't chasing a feeling or trying to get ahead of my apathy or trying to prevent the pot from boiling over. And like you said, I knew you wouldn't judge me. I got up and sat cross-legged on the bed, my blood pumping with enthusiasm. It's like without the anxiety of being outed, there's me, the sociopath. I said, putting one hand on the side of the bed. But now there's also me, the normal person. I matched the gesture with my opposite hand. It's like I found the missing piece or something, and now, boom, I slapped my hands together. Boom, what? He asked. I grimaced and shook my head. That's the thing, I said. I haven't worked that part out yet. David fell onto his back, shaking his head at the ceiling. All I know is the way I felt tonight in that house is the same way I felt in elementary school when I stabbed Sid. Now, if you go back and remember I think it was chapter 3, she discussed stabbing a classmate with a pencil because she was irritated with this child. She didn't want to hear us talk anymore, which is a complete, it is a trait of a sociopath that this is very common. They do things like that, right? All right. It's just criminal behavior, really. So then she goes, and when I locked the girls in the bathroom, I decided against telling him about the cat in Virginia. Okay, so when she was a child, she also found a cat, this is very triggering, I'm so sorry, because this is part of the book I don't like. She picked the cat up and started choking the life out of it, and then just threw it down. It did not pass away, thank God, but then she just threw it down and walked away, said she did not feel, right? She didn't feel anything, she did that. Now, I'm telling you, they also talk about sociopaths, these kind of people who started out being mean or hurting animals. That was the first things that they would kill or hurt, right, as animals. Okay. David looked deeply concerned. But how's that good, he asked. He listened patiently as I talked about the euphoric effect that violent acts had always produced, and my steadfast refusal to commit them as a result. I never found anything else that produces that same feeling. I paused until tonight. So what is that feeling? David asked, sitting up. Can you describe it to me? Well, I allowed my gaze to disappear into the folds of the giant white comforter as I thought about how to explain it. Surrender, I replied slowly. Complete apathetic surrender. Like I don't care about anything, but more importantly, I don't care about not caring, and I'm in complete control. I still don't get how that's good, David replied. Well, it's good because so much of my bad behavior has been a result of anxiety, stress about the fact that I don't feel. But tonight, none of that was at play. I smiled just thinking about it. Tonight I did something I knew was wrong because I wanted to, not because pressure or stuck stress, as she calls it, was forcing my hand, but simply because I could. I knew that I wouldn't have any guilt or fear or remorse or anything. I shrugged and then smiled, and because I knew it would be fun. It's like I allowed myself to just enjoy being me. I continued, and when I did, I got that euphoric feeling, a sensation of wholeness, the total exposure, but with none of the stress. I let out a satisfied exhale. It was like feeling of this is me, this is who I am, and I don't care who knows it or what anyone thinks about it, and I don't feel the least bit bad about it. I could tell he was struggling to understand. I promise it's a nice feeling. Okay, he said. Look, in the grand scheme of things, what you did tonight wasn't bad. I get it. Technically, you shouldn't have been there, but whatever. My only issue is that the complete absence of guilt. It's no big deal to not feel bad about going into an empty house. The problem is, when you don't feel bad about other things, bigger things, I worry about it being a slippery slope for you. I started to protest, but he cut me off saying, I know you think it's pointless, honey, but it's not. Guilt is one of the things, right, that holds people together. You know, hang on. He goes, just a second, guys, I gotta find more. Society would fall apart if nobody ever felt bad about doing bad things. He paused and then added, guilt, for lack of a better word, is good. So you're reverse Gordon Gekko, I declaimed. David laughed. What do you expect after 12 years of Catholic school? Well, I shot him a sly smile. Well, maybe I could help you shed some of that schoolboy guilt. I said, crawling on top of him. I put my lips to his ear. Sociopathy has its perks, you know. I whispered, your first lesson could start next door with me. You want to go over there now? Why not? There's definitely nobody home. David grabbed my wrist. Oh my God, she is so bad. David grabbed my waist and flipped me over, pinning me to the bed. Then he kissed me and we forgot all about the neighbor's house. The next morning, I tossed the little statue into the drawer of my bedside table. I didn't think I'd be using it anytime soon. Despite my excursion across the street, I was no longer keen on finding opportunities for misadventure. But as it turned out, I didn't have to go looking. Opportunities came looking for me. Oh boy. Okay, so that is the end of chapter 14. The next chapter is chapter 15, and it's the name of it's called Punked. She is, I tell you what, she's very interesting. And if you have not seen it before, where I found her was I was watching something about sociopathy, and I was listening to her talk about this, and she started talking about how she was actually diagnosed as a sociopath. And then I listened to this whole series that she had. She's actually a doctor. Her name is Patrick, Gagene. I don't want to say it wrong. I don't know. I think it's Gain or Gagne. She's a PhD. And so she wrote this book. It's called, let me figure out the name of this book. Hang on. Sociopath, a memoir. She's very, very interesting. She's very open about it. She's very just to the point about it. And I would look forward to reading other books that she has written. She seems to have a really good grasp. It's easy for her to tell us what she's feeling. She's good at writing. She's funny anyway. So I think we've been on here for an hour and 12 minutes, which is not very long, but I just wanted to read those 3 chapters today. Tomorrow we're going to read chapters 15. Let me see how long they are. We might read 4 chapters tomorrow because these look kind of short. They are a little bit. Okay, here we go. Let me look. Okay. Yeah, we're going to read chapter 15, 16, and 17, because then chapter 18 starts into part 3. So be prepared for that. I like to come over here and start reading about 11:30. That's what time we are. And on Wednesday, why are you doing that? On Wednesday, we're going to be on my other channel with Jen Liu from the Ward Case Studies to discuss Eileen Warnos and the question is, what was she? Was she sociopathic? Was she psychopathic? What was traumatic about her childhood? Which, what from my understanding, is everything. Caused her to become a serial killer. Anyway, it's good to see everybody. I promise I won't be on my avatar tomorrow. I'll just come out and be myself. Anyway, y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you for coming by. I always say, come in when you can, stay as long as you can, listen when you want to. I appreciate every one of you listening when you can. Just enjoy it. That's all I wanted to say. Have a good afternoon. Bye, everybody. Looking forward to seeing you again. Bye, guys. Bye, guys.